Shari Vilas, I want to talk to you. I want to talk to Maharaj. Just kidding.
Yeah, sometimes happens. Everyone
Talk to Maharaj about me. I want Brahman Diksha now. Really.
that's a personal thing.
No, I need some recommendation, some help.
You recommend yourself.
He's aspiring and your friend, man.
Is Ramapatran?
Huh? Ramapat, yeah.
I don't have his contact right now.
No, but I have to go through this temple.
Oh yes.
Yeah, for the late house.
But I can tell him.
Yeah, we have done it. Yeah.
He knows me. Kuranga. Evo. Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Prapta Sakalyana Gunanavasya Vande Gurashi Charana Ravindam Prapta Sakalyana Gunanavasya Vande Gurashi Charana Ravindam Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam
Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda
Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Mahaprabhu ki Tana Nitya Gita Vaditramadhyam Manasurasena Mahaprabhu ki
Nitya Gita Vadisyamadhyam Manasurasena
Romanchakam pasru tarangavajo Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam
Yomadyakampa Tarangavajo Vande Guru Shri Charanaravinda
Shri Vigrahara Dana Nityanana Shringaratanama Niramarjanado Shri Vigrahara
Dhananityanana Shringaretanama Nirmanjanardo
Juktasya Bhaktamsa Niyunjatapi Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam
Yuktasya bhaktam Niyunjatopi
Vande Gurashi Charana Chaturvidha Shri Bhagavat Prasado Swatana Triptan Hari Bhakta Sangam Chaturvidha Shri Bhagavat Prasado Swatana Triptan Kritaiva Tripti Bhajato Shadeva Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam
Triptaiva triptim bhajata sadaiva Vande Guru Shri Charanara
Shiradikama Gabayara Para Madhurya Leela Gunarupanam Shiradikama Para Madhurya Leela Pratichanasa Dhanalopasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Ne kunjayuno Rati Kelisidhai Jayali Virjuktir Apekshaniya Ne kunjayuno Rati Kelisidhai Jayali Virjuktir Tatrati Daksha Ativalabhasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Sakshadharitena Shamasta Shastri Ruktastathava Vyataiva Sadvi Sakshadharitena Shastri Kintu Pravarja Priya Eva Tasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam
Kintu Prabhuya Srivatasya Vande Guru Shri
Charanara Vrindam Yasya Prasada Bhagavat Prasado Yasya Prasada Nagati Kutapi Yasya Prasada Bhagavat Prasado Yasya Prasada Jayam Stuvam Tasya Yasatrin Sandhyam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Dhyayam Stuvam Tasya Yasatrin Sandhyam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nitina Mine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Swami Nitina Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravane Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pachata Desha Tarine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pachata Desha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Chaitanya Nityananda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna
Krishna Krishna
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Yaraya Nama Krishna Jadavaya Nama Jadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namaha Gopal Govindaram Shri Madhusudan Giridhari Gopina Madana Mohan Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Sita Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavata Gita Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhattaraguna Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasaraguna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Shri Shri Radha Nila Madhava Radha Nila Madhava Radhe Jaya Jagannath Jaya Baladeva Jaya Subhadrama Jaya Sudarshan Chakra Jaya Sitaram Jaya Sitaram Sitaram Jaya Lakshman Hanuman Nitai Gaura Haribo 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 Nitai Gaur Haribo 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 Nitai Gaur Premanande Haribo Jaya Vishnu Par Paramhansa Prabhajakacharya Sutra Sri Shishimad Yajvan Kes Abhacharavina Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki ISKCON Pratishtha Viviti Samstapakacharya Vaishnava Siramani Patita Pavana Srila Prabhupada Ji Maharaj Ki Jai Shri Gauriya Guru Varga Patita Udhari Ki Jai Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunatha Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Guna Sat Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai Nama Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ji Ki Jai Jai Ananta Kuti Vaishnava Vrindi Ki Jai Jai Premisi Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrindi Ki Jai Jai Param Dayal Sri Nityananda Prabhu Ki Jai Prema Nama Sankirtane Ka Janaka Prema Purushottama Shri Sachinandani Shriman Gauranga Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Gaura Hari Mavranaya Avatari Ki Jai Golokera Pramadhana Harinam Sankirtan Jaga Ki Jai Yuga Dharma Hare Krishna Mahamantra Ki Jai Brihat Nidanga Transcendental Book Distribution Seva Ki Jai Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopina Radha Kund Syamakund Giriraj Govardhan Ki Jai Shri Brajabim Vrindavan Mathurudham Ki Jai Deloship Shri Radha Nila Madhava Ki Jai Shri Mayapur Navadvip Eka Chakradham Ki Jai परम करुण शिष्य गौर निताय की जय। श्री पुरुषोत्तम कित्र जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय। श्री श्री जगन्नाथ स्वामी बलदेव प्रभु श्रीमाती सुभद्रा देवी सुदर्शन चक्र भगवान की जय। भक्ति सर्व विघ्न विनाशन कर्ण सिंह रे भगवान की जय। गंगा माई जमुना माई की जय। तुलसी महारानी वृंदी देवी भक्ति देवी की जय। श्री मथुरा रानी की समवेत भक्त वृंद की जय। निताय गौरी प्रमानंदे। All glory to the assembled bodies. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glories, all glory, glory to Sri Sri Guru Sri Gauranga.
Namaste Narasimhaya. Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Prahlad Lad Daine. हिरण्यकाशी पूर्वसहार शिलाटंकानकालाये एतो नरसिंहा परतो नरसिंहा यतो यतो यामि ततो नरसिंहा बाहिर नरसिंहा हृदय नरसिंहा नरसिंहमदिं शरणं प्रपदे तव कर कमलवरे नाकाम अद्भुत सिंगाम दलिता हिरण्यकशिपु तनुभृंगा केशवधीर्ता नरहरि रूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे नाम कर कवनवरे नाकाम अद्भुत सिंगार केशवधीर्ता नरहरि रूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय नरसिंह देव जय नरसिंह देव जय नरसिंह देव जय नरसिंह देव जय भक्त प्रहलाद जय भक्त प्रहलाद जय भक्त प्रहलाद जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय जय गुरुदेव गुरुदेव बोल नरसिंह भगवान की जय, भक्त प्रहलाद की जय, प्रभुपाद महाराज की जय। Yes, 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 yes. Please do it.
Thank you.
Hari Bol, Hari Bol.
श्री वृंदायै तुलसी देवाय प्रियै केशव सत्य विष्णु भक्ति प्रादि देवी सतवताय वृंदायै तुलसी देवाय प्रियै केशव सत्य विष्णु भक्ति प्रादि देवी शतवताय नमः। वृंदायै तुलसी देवाय प्रियै केशव सच्चा विष्णु भक्ति प्रादि देवी शतवताय श्रीमती तुलसी महारानी वृंदा देवी की जय।
तुलसी के नः पियासी नमो नमः। आसी के नः पियासी नमो नमः। राधा कृष्ण सेवा पाओ यही अभिलाषी। राधा कृष्ण हो यही अभिलाषी। तुलसी के न पियासी नमो नमः। जे तुम्हारा शरण लोवे तारा वांछ पूर्ण होए। शरण लोवे तारा वांछ पूर्ण होए। कृपा कोरी कोरो तारे वृंदावन वासी। रो तारे तुलसी के ना पियासी नमो नमः।
मोर यही अभिलाष विलास कुंज दियो नायन हरि सदा युगारोपरासी तुलसी के ना पियासी नमो नमः के ना पियासी निवेदनाधारो सखी अनुगाता करो सेवयाधिकार दीजय करो नेंजदासी तुलसी के ना पियासी नमो नमः दीन कृष्ण दास को यही जैन मोरा हो श्री राधा गोविंद प्रेम सदा जैन बाकी तुलसी के ना पियासी नमो नमः आनि कानि पापानि ब्रह्माहत्यदि कानि च तानि तानि पदक्ष्यन्ति पदक्षिणे पदे पदे पानि ब्रह्माहत्यदि तानि हे आनि कानि झापा पानि ब्रह्मा हत्ते कानि चाह तानि तानि पाथयन्ति पदक्षिणे पदे पदे हे आनि कानि झापा पानि ब्रह्मा हत्ते कानि चाह तानि तानि पाथयन्ति पदक्षिणे पदे पदे Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. जय तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी जय तुलसी महारानी जय बिंदे देवी जय बिंदे देवी जय बिंदे देवी जय बिंदे देवी जय भक्ति देवी जय भक्ति देवी जय भक्ति देवी जय भक्ति देवी
Beloved Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire to attend the service of Shri Radha Krishna. Whoever takes shelter of his wish is fulfilled. Bestow your mercy upon him, we make you resident over in love. My desire that you also give me a residence, pleasure grove, start within my vision, I will always be wholly beautiful, constant to Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower of the angels of Raj. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me your own maid servant. This very full and lowly servant Krishna praise. May I always stream in love, Shri Radha Govinda, Shri Mati Tulsi Maharani, Brinda Devi Ki Jai. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Shikhastakam Ki Jai. Chaito Datanam Mahajanam Bhava Mahada Bhagmini Vapanam Shri Akari Vachandrika Vikaranam Vidyavadu Jivanam Anandam Mudivardhanam Pratipadam Purnamrita Swadanam Sarvatmasnam Parampara Vijayati Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Baudha Nija Sarva Shaktis Tatra Pita Niyamita Smarane Nakala Pita Druchitaba Kripaya Bhagavan Mamapi Durdaiva Midrishamya Jani Nanuraga Trunarapi Sunichena Tarorapi Saishnuna Amani Namanadena Kirtaniya Sadari Na Dhanam Na Janam Na Sundarim Kavitamba Jagarishaka Maye Mama Janmani Janmanishwari Bhavatar Bhakti Rahituki Tvai Oinandatanuja Kinkaram Patitam Ma Vishame Bhavam Buddho Kripaya Tava Parapankaja Stitaduli Sadrisham Vichintaya Nayanam Galora Shrudharaya Vadanam Gadagarudhaya Gira Pulakarin Chitam Vapukada Tavanama Grahane Bhavisati Jugaitam Nimishena Chakrusha Pravrasaitam Sunyaitam Jagat Sarvam Govinda Virahe Name Asli pinastumam Adarshanar marmahatam karotuva Jatatathava vidadatulam poto Matpranatastu saivana para Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Sikhyastakam ki jai. Namo Mahavarannaya Krishna Prema Pradayate, Krishnayo Krishna Chaitanya Namani Guru Tvishenma. Namo Vishwadaya Krishna Krishna. As after. Translation. Glory to the Sri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan moment is the prime benediction for humanity at large, because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we're always anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings. And thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govind. In these transcendental names, you have invested all your transcendental energies. There are even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness, you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names. But I'm so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. Once you chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself a Lord and strolling in the street, one should be more taller than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. Only one Yakasa that you was from service birth to birth. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yes, some or other have fallen in this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, but will my eyes will be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up? And when will the hairs of my body stand on end in the recitation of your name? O Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I feel all vacant in the world of your absence. I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and he sure remains so, even if he handles me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, which is always my worshipful Lord, unconditionally. There are 10 offenses in the matter of chanting the holy name of the Lord that should be avoided. They are as follows. 1. Blasphemy. Vote is to dedicate the life for propagating the holy name of the Lord. 2. To consider names of demigods, like Shiva or Brahma, to be equal to or independent of the name Lord Vishnu. 3. To disobey the orders of the spiritual master. 4. To blaspheme the Vedic literatures or literatures and pursuits of Vedic vision. 5. Consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. 6. To give some interpretation to the holy name of the Lord. 7. To commit sinful activities on the strength of chanting the holy name. 8. To consider the chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which are offered in Vedas as fruitive activities, karma kanda. 9. To instruct the faithless person by the glories of the holy name. And 10. To not have complete faith in chanting the holy name, and to maintain material attachments even after understanding so many instructions on this matter. It's also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be Vaishnava must carefully guard against these 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success. Krishna Prema. Now let us offer our most humble obeisances unto all the Vaishnavas, devotees of the Lord. They are just like desire trees. They can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned soul.
Okay, it's on. Right, thank you. Shri Guru Pranama prayers ki jai. Om Aganya Timirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chaksurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manubhistam Sapitam Yena Bhutali Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Pandeham Shri Guru Shri Jataha Pachikamalan Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Sa Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagunara Gunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Saidvaitam Sabadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahaguna Lalita Shri Vishaka Nivitam Sa Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutali Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namini Namaste Saraswati Deve Guruvani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paschatya Desatarine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutali Shrimate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Tinamini Shivarsavani Devi Daitaya Kripabdaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Daine Prabhave Namaha Bhakti Da Shigora Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namaste Namaste Guruvani Shri Murtaye Dinatarine Rupa Nuga Virudapa Apasiddhanta Dvantaharine Namo Gora Kishwaraya Sakshat Vairagya Murtaye Vipralambara Sambode Padambujayate Namaha Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Sachitananda Namine Gora Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Gora Vir Bhavabhumestvam Nirdesta Sajjana Priya Vaishnava Sarvabhaumashri Jagadatayate Namaha Vanchakalpa Tarabhyascha Kripa Sindhubhye Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Padayate Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gurichuse Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakam Namami Bhakta Saktikam Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Jayatam Suratur Bangur Mama Manda Mater Gati Matsarvaswa Padambujo Radha Madana Mohano Divyad Vrindaranya Kalpadumadaha Shimad Ratnagara Simhasanastito Shimad Radha Shila Govinda Devo Prastali Bihi Sevyamanam Smarami Shiman Rasa Rasaram Bivam Sivata Tatastita Karsan Venusmanir Gopir Gopinatak Striyestuna Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanustute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivindam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Guru Pranama prayers ki jai, Shri Brahma Samiti ki jai, Shwara Parama Krishna Sachitananda Vigraha, Anadi Radhi Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam, Chintamani Prakara Satma Sukalpa Vriksha, Laksa Vrite Susurabi Rabhibalyantam, Lakshmi Sahasra Satasambrama Sevyamanam, Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Venam Kwanantam Aravinda Dalayataksam Barhavatam Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam Kandar Pakoti Kamaniya Vishesha Sobham Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Alola Chandra Kalasadvan Amadyavam Siratnam Gadam Pranayakeli Kalavilasam Shamam Tribanga Lalitani Taprakasam Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasya Sakalendriya Vrittimanti Pasyanti Panti Kalyanti Chiram Jaganti Yam Sham Sundaram Vatsya Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Advaitam Achutam Anadim Ananta Rupam Adyam Purana Purisham Navayovanam Cha Vede Sudurlabam Adurlabam Atma Bhakto Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Pantastu Koti Satavatsara Sampragam Yovayor Ratapi Manasom muni pungamanam sopyasti yat prapadasimya vichintya tatve govindam adi purisham tamaham bhajami ekopya sora chayatam jagadanda koti yas chaktirasti jagadanda chaya yadanta dantarasta paramanu chayantarastam govindam adi purisham tamaham bhajami yad bhava bhavi tadviyo manajasta daiva samprapya rupa mahima sanayana bhusa suktaryameva nigama pratitaistuvanti govindam adi purisham tamaham bhajami ananda chinmaya rasa pratibhavita bhistabirya eva nicharupa taya kalavi goloka eva nivasata kilatma bhuto govindam adi purisham tamaham bhajami premanjana charita bhakti vilochanena santak sadeva hidayesa vilokayanti yam shama sundaram achintya gunaswarupam govindam adi purisham tamaham bhajami aramadi murti sukalani menatistan anavataram akarod bhuvanesa kintu Krishna swayam samabhavat paramam pumanyo govindam adi purisham tamaham bhajami yasya prabha prabhavato jagadanda koti yas koti svasesa vasabhadi vibhuti vehinam tad brahma niskalam anantam asesa bhutam govindam adi purisham tamaham bhajami mayahi yasya jagadanda satani sute traigunya tad visaya veda vitayamanam sattva balambi parasattvam visuddha sattvam govindam adi purisham tamaham bhajami ananda chinmaya rasatmataya manasuya praninam patifulam smaratam ubetya lilayatena bhuvanani jaya yajasram govindam adi purisham tamaham bhajami goloka namni nichitamni tale chitasya devi mahesu haridama sate satesu te te prabhava nichaya vitascha yena govindam adi purisham tamaham bhajami shistista te palaya sadhava saktireka chayeva yasya bhuvanani vibharti durga ichanu rupam abhyasya chichesta tesa govindam adi purisham tamaham bhajami shiram yata dadi vikara visesa yoga sanjayate nahitata pritakasti hetu yasam bhutam apiptatam vaitikarya govindam adi purisham tamaham bhajami diparchadeva hita santanam abhyupetya dipayate vivita hetu samanu dharma yastadrigeva hicha vishnu taya vibhati govindam adi purisham tamaham bhajami yakarna narna vajale bhajatisma yoga nidram ananta jagadanda saroma kubha adhara sakti avalambya param swamurtim govindam adi purisham tamaham bhajami yasyaika nisvasita kalamata avalambya jivante loma vilaja jagadanda nata vishnur mahansa yasya kalaviseso govindam adi purisham tamaham bhajami basmanya tasma sakaleshu nijesu teja sriyam kiyat prakatayat apitadvadatra brahmaya esa jagadanda vidana karta om govindam adi purisham tamaham bhajami yat pada palava yugam vinidaya kumbha dvande pranama samayesa ganadi raja vignan vihantam alamasya jagatrayasya govindam adi purisham tamaham bhajami agnir mahiga ganamambu marudisasya kalastatatma manasiti jagatrayani yasmad bhavanti vivanti sancha govindam adi purisham tamaham bhajami yaschaksuresa savita sakala grahana raja samasta suramurti rasesa teja yasya gaya brahmati sambrita kala chakro govindam adi purisham tamaham bhajami dharmota papa nichaya sutayastapamsi brahmadi kitta patakava tayascha jiva yadata mata vibhava prakata pabhava govindam adi purisham tamaham bhajami yastrinda gopa matavendra mahosva karma bandhanu rupa falabhajana matanoti karmani nirdahati kintu chibhakti bhajam govindam adi purisham tamaham bhajami yam krodha kama sahaja pranayadi bitti vatsaya moho guru gaurava sevya bhava sanchintya tasya sadvisim tanamapurete govindam adi purisham tamaham bhajami shriyakanta kanta parama purusha kalpataravo dhrumabhumis chintamani ganam ayitoyam amritam kata ganam natyam gamaram apivam sipriya sakhi chiranandam jyoti param apitada swadyam apicha sayatra shiradibhi shrabati shirabhibhyasta sumahan nimesar dakyova vajati nahiyatrapi samaya bhaje switad vibham tamaham iha golakam itiyam vidantas te santakshati viracharakati paye ishvara paramakrishna sachitananda vigraha and Adi Radha Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam Sri Brahma Samhita Ki Jai, Sri Guru Vastaka Prayers Ki Jai. The spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy, just as a cloud pours water on a forest fire to extinguish it. So the spiritual master delivers the materially afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence. I, for my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such spiritual master, is an ocean of auspicious qualities. Chanting the holy name, dancing in ecstasy, singing and playing musical instruments, the spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Because he is relishing the mellows of pure devotion within his mind, sometimes his hair stands on end, he feels quivering in his body, and tears flow from his eyes like waves. I offer my respectful obeisance unto Lotus Feet as such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is always engaged in the temple worship of Shri Radha and Krishna. He also engages his disciples in such worship. They dress the deities in beautiful clothes and ornaments, clean their temple, and perform other similar worship of the Lord. I offer my respectful obeisance unto Lotus Feet as such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is always offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious food, analyzes that which is licked, chewed, drunk, and sucked. When the spiritual master sees that devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavad Prasada, he is satisfied. I offer my respectful obeisance unto Lotus Feet as such a spiritual master. Spiritual master is always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited conjugal pastimes of Radhika and Madhava and their qualities, names, and forms. The spiritual master aspires to relish these at every moment. I offer my respectful obeisance unto the Lotus Feet as such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is very dear because he is expert in assisting gopis who at different times make different textual arrangements for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs within the groves of Vrindavana. I offer my most humble obeisance unto the Lotus Feet as such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is to be honored as much as the Supreme Lord because he is the most confidential servant to the Lord. This is acknowledged in all revealed scriptures and followed by all authorities. Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisance unto Lotus Feet as such a spiritual master, as a bona fide representative of Sri Hare Krishna. By the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives the benediction of Krishna. Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement. Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master. At least 3 times a day, I should offer my respectful obeisance unto Lotus Feet of my spiritual master, his divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Go to Premanande Haribol. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 1, verse number 14. Iti uchivam tatasu yodanena Pravrita Kopa Spuridad Darena Asat Krita Sat Spehaniya Sila Sata Sakarna Nuja Saubalena Iti, thus, Uchivan, while speaking, Tatra, there, Suyodanena, by Duryodhana, Pravrida, swollen with, Kopa, anger, Spurita, flapping, Adarena, lips, Asatkrita, insulted, Sat, respectable, Sprihaniya Sila, desirable qualities, Shata, Vidura, Sa, with, Karna, Anuja, younger brothers, Sobalena, with Sakuni. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. While speaking thus, Vidura, whose personal character was esteemed by respectable persons, was insulted by Duryodhana, who was swollen with anger, and whose lips were trembling. Duryodhana was in company with Karna, his younger brothers, and his maternal uncle Sakuni. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. It is said that giving good counsel to a foolish person causes the fool to become angry, just as feeding milk to a snake only increases its venomous poison. Saint Vidura was so honorable that his character was looked up to by all respectable persons, but Duryodhana was so foolish that he dared to insult Vidura. This was due to his bad association with Sakuni, his maternal uncle, as well as with his friend Karna, who always encouraged Duryodhana in his nefarious acts. So nefarious means very bad. Let's look up that word up. Nefarious. Nefarious means evil, bad, also very inauspicious. What does it say? Nefarious. Right. Wicked or criminal. So, how does a person become wicked or evil or criminal? We should ask that question. Because when you're born, are you born already evil and wicked and criminal? So, there is something in the 14th chapter that's very interesting. Where it said, let me see. Maybe it's the 16th chapter. Yeah, it's the 16th chapter, I'm sorry. Okay, let's take a look. In the 16th chapter, I think it's verse number 5. Yeah. Daivi sampad vimokshaya nibandaya surimata masucha sampadam daivim abhijato sipandava. So this is a very important verse. Prabhupada speaks about this. It says, the transcendental qualities are conducive to liberation, whereas the demoniac qualities make for bondage. Do not worry, O son of Pandu, for you are born with the divine qualities. And purport by Srila Prabhupada, and he says, Lord Krishna encouraged Arjuna by telling him that he was not born with demoniac qualities. His involvement in the fight was not demoniac, because he was considering the pros and cons. What does that mean? Well, a person who is intelligent will always consider before action the pros and cons. That means the benefits and the, let's say, not good results that could happen by performing a certain action. So if one doesn't think like that, then they're stepping into, let's say, a hornet's nest. Hornets are very, very dangerous bees that can kill you, especially if they get angry, because you rile them up by messing around with their nest. They'll come out in a large number of bees and they'll bite you. So we don't want to solicit a hornet's nest. So therefore, one should consider before any action the pros and cons, what may be beneficial and what may not be beneficial of an act that we may perform or we want to perform. That's the sign of an intelligent person. So it says, he, meaning Arjuna, was considering whether respectable persons like Bhisma and Drona should be killed or not. So he was not acting under the influence of anger, false prestige, or harshness. This is another very important point. Once the Muslim called Hazrat Ali, he was related to Muhammad, and he was fighting a battle, and he knocked down an enemy soldier, and he was going to kill him. And the enemy soldier spit in his face. And then Hazrat Ali didn't kill him, put down his weapon. And the soldier was shocked. He said, "Why don't you kill me?" He said, "Well, I was going to kill you in the name of Allah. But when you spit in my face, I became angry. Therefore, I forgot about Allah. Therefore, I cannot kill you." So the enemy soldier converted to Islam on the spot when he heard that. So, yeah, to act in a state of anger is very dangerous. Now, there's anger and there's anger. Like, for example, when Hanuman became angry at Ravana because he kidnapped Sita and he wanted to do something about it, that type of anger is justified. But if a person is angry because someone spits on you or someone insults you, or your wife might say something nasty, or your husband might say something nasty, there's no, that type of anger is very bad because it'll lead to very negative outcomes. So therefore, he's saying here that he was considering whether respectable persons such as Bhisma and Drona should be killed or not. So he was not acting under the influence of anger, false prestige, or harshness. Therefore, he was not of the quality of the demons. Yeah, demons, they get angry, they feel insulted because they have a false ego, a big inflated, gigantic false ego, bigger than the Empire State Building. And also they have harshness. The way they speak is very harsh. And we're going to see that this happened to Vidura by none other than Mr. Harshness, Duryodhana. And it had serious consequences. So it says here, therefore, he, meaning Arjuna, was not of the quality of the demons. These are the behavior of the demons. They get angry, they have false prestige and false ego, and they're harsh. Their language is harsh. For a Kshatriya, a military man, shooting arrows at the enemy is considered transcendental, and refraining from such a duty is demoniac. So Arjuna is a good guy, right? But he's on the verge of doing something demoniac. That is, not following Krishna's order and not doing his duty as a Kshatriya and fighting and if necessary, killing. Therefore, there was no cause for Arjuna to lament. Anyone who performs the regulative principles of the different orders of life is transcendentally situated. Well, there are different orders in life. Like there's Brahmanas, there's Kshatriyas, and there's Vaishyas, and there's Sudras. Nowadays, you have what's called let's see, what is it called? You have the Brahma Griha. It's a brahmachari who's acting like a griha, like a grihasta, because he has his own bank account and he makes his own independent decisions. So that would that's not a real brahmachari. The brahmacharis have to be completely surrendered to the spiritual master and follow the instructions of the spiritual master dutifully and without hesitation, and not try to build up any personal wealth. They have to give everything to the guru. And the guru also is not trying to build up any wealth. The guru will give in charity to people who deserve it. And the guru will live very simply. So we see that when you mix things, then you get what's called an aberration, something that is not bona fide, like for example, a grihasta who is not giving in charity. The dharma of a brahmachari is to be surrendered to guru and not trying to aggrandize or build up wealth or build up any type of false prestige, etc. The brahmachari has to be engaged in acts of sacrifice. The grihasta has to be engaged in acts of charity all the time, because there are 4 orders. There's brahmachari, grihasta, vanaprastha, and sannyas. Well, 3 of those orders are not supposed to work for their own benefit. They're supposed to be completely dependent on Krishna and the largesse, as they say. Look that word up, largesse, Largess. The largesse of the grihastas. And the grihastas have to be very charitable. They should not be greedy, because 3 orders of society are not engaged in productive work. They're not trying to make profits. What they're doing is doing their duty for the maintenance of the society. What's the word, largesse?
So it's the money or gifts given generously.
There you go. So, therefore, if people act, therefore, this last sentence says, therefore, there is no anyone who performs the regulative principles of the different orders of life is transcendentally situated. See? And the Kshatriyas, they have to be brave. They have to be trained to protect the principles of Dharma. They're not supposed to attack other countries to build up the territorial, let's say, their territorial assets. Like, for example, after Rama defeated Ravana, right, what did he do? He did not become the king of Lanka. He went back to Ayodhya, and he made Vibhishan the king. And Vibhishan managed Lanka in a way that is Krishna conscious, or according to Sanatana Dharma. And so Rama's purpose was not to gain more territory. It was simply to stop the aberration, or stop the evilness of Ravana, and establish a saintly character in charge of Lanka. So that is the Vedic way. But, if people invade a country, like if you read the history of Islam in India, it is horrible. It's a miracle that there's still Hindus in India, because the Muslims were extremely, not all of them, like Akbar was not crazy and cruel, but many Muslim leaders like Lodi and like Muhammad Ghazni and Aurangzeb, they were extremely cruel, and basically the Muslims destroyed 40,000 Hindu temples in India. 40,000, right? And they converted a lot of people by, mean laws. Like they had the jizya tax. If you were a Hindu, and you had to pay a tax because you were not Muslim. The Muslims didn't pay the tax, only the Hindus. And the poor Hindus who couldn't afford it, if they had any property, it'd be seized and they'd be put in jail. So unfortunately, the richer Hindus did not help the poor Hindus. Therefore, the poor Hindus were forced to convert to Islam. There were a lot of things like that. And there was massacres also. There was rape. So all kinds of very nasty things happened during the 800 years of Muslim rule of India, right? And Muslims were more or less like that everywhere they went. Sometimes they weren't. Like, for example, they conquered Indonesia by preaching. They didn't kill anybody. They just preached, and they conquered Indonesia. So, and in some other places too, but most of the times there was through cruelty and invasion and forced conversion. Anyway, So here we see, this is a very important, it's a short purport, but it has many important points in it. So this is 16th chapter, verse number 5. So therefore, we should also be very careful how we decide to do things before we do it. And so, for example, yesterday in the class I was giving, I was explaining to the kids, there should be 3 things you should consider before you act. 1, can this help me in Krishna consciousness? 2, when I do this, will I have done the right thing, and will I be satisfied, or will I regret having done what I did? And number 3, is this something that is beneficial to me and to others? So we have to consider things in that way. Or as it says, smartavya satatam Vishnu, vishmartavya najatuchit, which means that always remember Krishna and never forget Krishna. So before acting, is this something I could offer to Krishna, and would it be acceptable to Krishna? And then secondly, will I be happy or satisfied that I did this, or will I be ashamed that I did it? Right? Like, for example, when a criminal is caught, he has to go to trial. And in the trial, a lot of evidence has to be presented that this person actually committed a crime and hurt someone, or was damaging the society, or whatever. And then, before the judge and then there's a jury, and then if the person is convicted, because there was overwhelming evidence, and then before the sentencing, they give a chance to the criminal to say something, right? They also give a chance to the victims of the crime to say something. So, if the criminal acknowledges that they did something wrong, and they unnecessarily caused pain and suffering to another person, sometimes the judge may feel that, okay, I won't throw the book at this person. I will be a little softer with him. Right? Sometimes criminals will, after they're judged, after they lose a case, they won't say anything, or sometimes they'll get up and be very defiant. And when they're defiant like that, after there's been overwhelming evidence that they committed a crime, then the judge sometimes gives the maximum penalty to that person. So what's the purpose of the trial? In Vedic times, criminals would come in front of the king. The king would hear them and hear the victims, and he would decide very quickly what would happen. And hopefully, kings were reasonable, and were not prejudicial. But in what we have today is there's a trial, and trial by your peers, right? There's a jury of your peers, people like yourself, like the criminal. They're not criminals, but they're normal people, and they presented all this evidence one way or the other, and they have to make a decision. And then the judge can temper it if he wants to, or he can accept it or not accept it, and pronounce a decision. Most of the time they accept. Sometimes judges have not accepted the decision of a jury. It's rare, but it happens, because they think that the jury, there was some fault in the jury's reasoning, or there was a person who corrupted the jury or something, So anyway, if we do not think carefully before we act, we will get into trouble. And if we act out of anger or false prestige, and we're unnecessarily harsh, then there's going to be a reaction, a serious reaction, and we will suffer. So, but most people are not taught to think like this. And ultimately, the highest criterion is, will Krishna accept this if I do it? Is it something I can offer to Krishna? And if the answer is no, we shouldn't do it, right? Like if your friends tell you, oh, it's really good to eat meat, or it's really nice to smoke marijuana. But the first question is, can I offer this to Krishna? No, he doesn't accept marijuana, and he doesn't accept meat. Therefore, I should not do it. This is considering the pros and cons from the point of view of Krishna consciousness. It's not the material way of thinking, it's the spiritual way of thinking, because the ultimate person that we're responsible to is Krishna. Therefore, can I offer this action to Krishna? And if the answer is no, we shouldn't do it. Right? Okay. And then secondly is we should never act out of anger unless it's justifiable anger. And justifiable anger is a very special case. When someone insults Krishna or tries to harm Krishna or Krishna's devotees, or insults the guru and things like that, then there is justifiable anger. But how do we act? Like, for example, if you hear blasphemy of Krishna, there are three things you can do. One is cut the tongue out of the person who blasphemed the Lord. Two is convince them with logic and reason to apologize. And three is walk away. Well, I would suggest you just walk away, unless you're strong enough to convince a person to apologize. I would not recommend you to cut their tongue out. Basically, that's killing the person. Why? Because there are rules and regulations in every country about assaulting someone. So, therefore, the best thing would be to walk away. But if you just stay there and continue to hear blasphemy of Krishna, that is sinful, and you will be punished for it. If you just sit there and listen to them blaspheming the Lord. And there's many people nowadays that say blasphemous things of God, and they get away with it. And no one says anything. And because of that, the people who hear those things and don't do anything about it, either walk away or convince the person to apologize and not do that again, or cut their tongue out, which means killing them. So therefore, one is sinful, and one will get a reaction for not doing anything. Okay, so, but acting out of anger, false prestige, and harshness is always a formula for bad karma. Right? And then for a Kshatriya to kill an enemy combatant on the battlefield, there's nothing wrong with it. And Prabhupada's saying it's transcendental. Wow, what an amazing statement. He's saying it's actually transcendental to do that. Or to be killed on the battlefield. There's nothing wrong with that, because why? Well, if we look at the 7th chapter, let's see what it says here. Is it the 7th chapter? It's actually glorious for a soldier who's fighting valiantly and is killed. It's actually a good thing. They'll go to the heaven, at least the heavenly planets, or they may go back to Godhead. Like in the case of the Battle of Kurukshetra, everyone in the Battle of Kurukshetra attained liberation. Because let's say the enemy soldiers who were killed, they were fighting against the Pandavas, and the Pandavas killed them. But they were seeing Krishna because Krishna was there on the battlefield. So everyone, whether they were enemies or they were on the side of the Pandavas, anyone who died attained liberation, right? Because they were seeing Krishna while they were dying. So there are a lot of interesting things that you can learn from the Bhagavad Gita. And there is a verse that explains the gloriousness of dying on the battlefield, and fighting valiant or bravely. Anyway, I'll find it later on and read it. Okay, so this is a very interesting verse. And at the end it says, therefore there was no cause for Arjuna to lament. Anyone who performs the regulative principles of the different orders of life is transcendentally situated. So, we can be a Sudra, but if our goal is to please Krishna, we can go back to Godhead. So it doesn't matter. You can be a Sudra, you can be a Vaishya, you can be a Kshatriya, or you can be a Brahmana. If your purpose is to please Krishna and follow the instructions of Guru, and follow who's simply repeating the instructions of Krishna, then you can go back to Godhead from any position, right? So that's what's interesting about this. And in the case of Lord Ramachandra, he proved that even outcasts of Vedic culture, such as Guha, or people like Sabari, who was also an outcast, she lived in the jungle, or someone like Jatayu, who wasn't even a human being. He was a vulture, right? Or someone like Hanuman, who was half human and half demigod and half animal. Or Vibhishan, who was a Rakshasa. All of those people became devotees. Lord Ramachandra didn't say, "Oh, you're a Rakshasa. I can't accept you as my devotee." No, he accepted him, and the vultures are the most vile birds in nature. They eat dead carcasses, right? But yet, Lord Rama embraced Jatayu when he was dying. And Jatayu died looking directly at the Lord. And Jatayu was a friend of Rama's father, Dasarath. So we see these amazing things in the Ramayana. And we should think about it very seriously, because we cannot, like Srila Prabhupada thought about these things seriously before he came to the West. And because he was thinking about doing something based on his guru's instructions that would never be acceptable to traditional Hindus, which is preaching to non-Hindus and trying to convince them to become not Hindu, but devotees. So that means that Krishna consciousness is not Hinduism, it's not Islam, it's not Christianity, it's not this, it's not that. It is transcendental to all these things if you are in the right consciousness. And people will recognize that. That's why Lord Chaitanya was able to convince Muslims to chant Hare Krishna and become devotees. Right? Like, for example, there are many people that they might even be Mayavadis, or there might even be demons who become devotees. Because of association. So the main thing is association. What does it say here? It says here that while speaking thus, Vidura, whose personal character was esteemed by respectable persons, was insulted by Duryodhana. Now, what does it say in the purport? It says, but Duryodhana was so foolish that he dared to insult Vidura. This was due to his bad association with Sakuni, his maternal uncle, as well as his friend Karna. So, the worst thing a person can do is to keep company with low-class people. That's the worst thing you can do. And I guarantee you that if you make friends and you are intimate with bad people, you will become bad. So, therefore, if we cannot see the difference between a good person and a bad person, we are walking off a cliff. You know what happens when you walk off a cliff? You fall down and get hurt, or you die. Right? So, associating with bad people is the worst thing you can do, because you will lose any possibility of being Krishna conscious. And hearing them saying blasphemous things, hearing them belittle spirituality and talk about nonsense all the time. So it doesn't matter who that person is. Like Duryodhana was a member of high-class, let's say, Vedic people, right? He knew a lot of, he was a Vedic person, but he was contaminated by his false ego and his father's encouragement to do evil things. The father did not instruct his son properly. And then he had bad association of Sakuni and Karna. So therefore, he became a demon. Although he knew everything about Vedic culture and he was able to see Krishna. See? So this is what's happening today. Young kids, especially with the internet and with low-class friends at school, they're getting contaminated. And they're not able to convince those people to stop being demons, but those demons are able to convince the devotee child to become a demon. And this is happening on a regular basis, and we see it all the time. And why is it? Because unless the kids regularly hear Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam spoken by genuine devotees, they will be attracted to all this nonsense, and it's coming from previous life. So we see from this verse, the 16th chapter, 5th verse, one can be born with demoniac qualities that's coming from the previous life. One could be born like that. And the only way to stop that is through constant association with genuine devotees, not by constant association with low-class people. So unless we understand that, like I was born with very bad karma, in a family of meat eaters, and a family that was somewhat religious, but not every member of my family was religious. It was only my great auntie that was religious. All the others were not really religious. They were just into making money. And my great auntie was a person that suffered tremendously in her life, and she had become very, let's say, pro-spirituality. She would be reading the Bible every day. She would be always praying, and she was always going to church and taking me with her. She couldn't take anybody else. They were not interested. My father and my mother, I mean, they might go for Christmas or Easter, but that was it. But my auntie took me every week to church. And she didn't have a car. We had to take public transportation, and we had to change buses and trains and things like that 3 or 4 times to get to the church and then to come back. So it was like a whole day process. So that's why we must seek out good association, because we will be influenced by overwhelming bad association. And there's overwhelming bad association today, whether it's on social media, whether it's in schools, whether it's at work, etc. So therefore, to be able to develop the discernment of who is worthy to be a friend and who is not worthy to be a friend is very important. Otherwise, we will out of sentimentality or emotionally become attached to bad people. And look what happens. You're going to read in the next verse that Vidura is telling his brother, get rid of your son. He's going to destroy the whole family. Why are you supporting this guy? This guy hates Krishna. Therefore, you should have nothing to do with him. It doesn't matter he's your son. He's extremely dangerous person, and he's going to ruin you and the rest of the family. Like Dhritarashtra had 100 sons and one daughter. So Duryodhana was only one son, but he treated Duryodhana like his favorite son, and he was a facilitator of Duryodhana. What's a facilitator? A person who does not give good advice and who is patronizing an evil person. So what happens? That person who's a facilitator and patronizing the evil person, he goes down also with the evil person. So all these things are being explained in this little purport here, in this whole section. The danger of associating with evil people and people who talk nonsense, people who don't take spiritual life seriously, people who talk against spiritual life. Okay, what time is it now? 7:11. Okay, 7:11. Bingo. We'll stop right there. Are there any questions? Oh, there's some. Oh, okay, wait a minute. I want to play a tape real quickly of Srila Prabhupada speaking. This is amazing. Where is it? No. This is a lecture the day after Shigor Purnima in Hawaii, March 5th, 1969. So this devotee is asking a question. He says, can we ask Krishna to force us to become Krishna conscious?
You can request him. And he sometimes forces. He puts you in such circumstances that you have no other way than to surrender to Krishna. Yes. There is special favor. There is special favor.
When Krishna forces us to be Krishna conscious, that's special.
My spiritual master wanted me to preach, but I did not like. But he forced me. Yes, that is my practical experience. I had no desire to accept the sannyas order and preach, but my spiritual master wanted it. I am not very much inclined, but he forced me. That is also done. There is special favor. When he forced me at that time, I thought that, what is this? What? I am committing some mistake or what is that? I was puzzled. But a little after I could understand that it is the greatest favor shown to me. So when Krishna forces somebody to surrender, that is a great favor. But generally he does not do so. But he does so to a person who is very sincere to Krishna's service. But at the same time, he has got slight desire for material enjoyment. In that case, he does. that this foolish person does not know that material facility will never make him happy. And he is sincerely seeking my favor. But he is foolish. Therefore, whatever resource, little resource he has got for material enjoyment, break it. Then he will have no other alternative than to surrender. That is stated in the Bhagavad Gita. Srimad Bhagavad. Jasyam anugrannami hariseta dhanam sanai. Krishna says that if I
88th chapter, 8th
do
verse.
somebody special favor, then I make him poverty stricken. I take away all his means of sense enjoyment. You see? That is stated in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Because here in this material world, everyone is trying to be happy by earning more money, by business, by service, by this way and that way. But in special cases, Krishna makes his business or service unsuccessful. Do you like that? At that time, he has no other alternative than to surrender to Krishna. Sometimes when you are unsuccessful in our business attempt or earning attempt, we become sorry that Krishna is so cruel upon me that I could not sustain this. But that is his favor, special favor. You should understand like that.
Haribo. It's an amazing, that's at the end of a long class. The devotee asked him a question. Can we pray to Krishna that he forces us to be Krishna conscious? Prabhupada said, well, it's very special. Only in the case of a very sincere devotee, but who still has some material attachments. And to bring him to be completely Krishna conscious, Krishna will take everything away from him. Yasyaham anugrinanti harishe taddanam sanai. I take everything away, Krishna says. And that way the devotee is forced to be Krishna conscious. But he said it's in rare cases. And Prabhupada, he's being honest. He said, look, I didn't want to take sannyas. I didn't want to go preaching all over the world. But my guru forced me. And then I realized after some time that that was the greatest mercy I ever received. Okay, no questions? Haribo.
Maharaj, I think we'll present some of the updates.
Speak louder. Speak louder.
We'll present some of the responses that you wanted us to update.
Yeah,
So
let's
next
do that tomorrow.
tomorrow, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So at some point I wanted to share this. So far I've been collecting in the last maybe month and a half all the words that you have introduced us to.
Okay. Vocabulary words.
Vocabulary words. So there's close to already 50 now.
This is our own lexicon.
It's amazing.
It's our
There
own
are so many
dictionary.
words. So whenever maybe that's also something we can share.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Like, if kids learn these words and they use them, the teachers would be shocked. Because to be able to use those words correctly is very good for communicating on a higher level. Right? Haribol. Thank you. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Who's going to sing? Yeah. You want the words? Or you know? Give them all back to me.
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma
Bando mohe savadhana mate
Bando mohe savadhana mate
Jahar prasade bhai E bhavatoriya jai Krishna prapti hoy jaha hoy te
Krishna prapti hoya hoy te
Guru mukha padma vakya Chitte koriya hai kya
Guru mukha padma vakya Chitte koriya kya
Aur na kari ho mane asha Shri Guru Charane Rati Eise Uttama Gati
Shri Guru Charane Rati Eise Uttama Gati
Je prasade pure sarva चक्षुदान दिलो जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से चक्षुदान दिलो जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशितो दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशितो प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाशा जाते प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाशा जाते वेद गाय जहर चरितो वेद गाय जहर चरितो श्री Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adam Janar Bandhu
Guru Karuna Sindhu Adana Janara Bandhu
Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adam Janar Bandhu
Guru Karuna Sindhu Adana Janara Bandhu
Lokanath Lokera Jivana
Jai Janara Chanana
Lokena Lokera Jivana
Jai Janara Chanana
Ha ha Prabhu Karo Daya Deho More Pad Chaya
Mora Daya Deha More Pada Jaya
Ha ha Prabhu Karo Daya Deho More Pad Chaya
Ah Prabhu Kora Daya Deha More Pada Jaya
Ebe Jaj Gushuk Tribhuvana
Vedikaya Janara Chanana
Ebe Jaj Gushuk Tribhuvana
Vedikaya Janara Chanana
Srila Prabhupada Patita Pavana
Prabhupada Patita Pavana Jaya
Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada
Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada
Krishna
Krishna Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Keep playing. Keep saying, chanting.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajika Chasta Tarasatara Shri Shimad His Divine Grace Sesi Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Shri Kahosh Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudeva Gaur Bhaktivedanta Ki Jai Shri Radha Krishna Gogopinath Samakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Shri Mayapura Dham Ki Jai Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai Tulasi Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Ganga Maya Ki Jai Jamuna Maya Ki Jai Samaveda Bhaktivinda Ki Jai Nitai Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the simple devotees. All glories to the simple devotees. All glories to the simple devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Patita Pavani Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutali Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami. Namaste Swati Devi Guru Nirvasesa Sunyavani Paskatya Desatarine Gaur Premanandi. The lotus feet of our spiritual master are the only way by which we can attain the pure devotional service. I bow down to his lotus feet with great awe and reverence. By his grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. My only wish is to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment to his lotus feet is the perfection that fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From him ecstatic prema emanates. By him ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, the friend of the poor and Lord and master of devotees. O Master, be merciful unto us. Give us the shade of your lotus feet. Your favor spread throughout all the three worlds. We take shelter of your lotus feet. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna. Namaste Saraswati Devi Guru Vani Bachani Nivasesara Paskati.